Feed the world, feed the fasting.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Chef YUSUF show where we cook the Islamic way. I want to praise Allah who gave us another opportunity to witness the holy blessed month of Ramadan, the month of when it's time for Maghrib. Unfortunately, a lot of us will eat here and drink there and grab food from everywhere until we, start to sweat and gasp for air, and does that complicate the worship that we don't care. I'm speaking, of course, about our bad eating habits. So I will go through some of the bad eating habits, that we should avoid in this month. At the same time, I will prepare a dish that is very well known in Ramadan. It is the dish of TABOULI or tabouleh. So the ingredients, really quick, as we can see, the star of the dish, in my opinion, according to the original dish, is from Lebanon. They put a lot of lemon. I put two and a half lemons or lemon juice. The tomato, we do not need too much, only one tomato. This is something that you can find in any Middle Eastern store. It's called burghul, or in the English, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, if it's pronounced the same, but we'll put it on the screen right here, and we'll hear it.
Bulgur.
Let's hear it again.
Bulgur.
Right, here we go. So I'm not going to put too much. I'm going to put the size of a coffee mug. This is a small coffee mug. And of course, I'm doing the ingredients according to the parsley, because this is basically a parsley dish. So I'm using 2 branches of parsley, and this is according to that ingredient measurement. So for 2 branches, I'll put 1 small finjan qahwa, which is the small coffee cup. The lettuce is for garnishing, and it is an optional. I use the Roman style. And here we have some basil, 1 branch, fresh basil and mint. They can be either fresh or they can be dried. Anything else is optional. I have a cucumber. I'm not going to put the whole thing, of course. I'm going to use a part of it, approximately this much. But I'm just giving an example that anything else is optional, and this is how to make taboulis. So go ahead and start it, inshallah. So because this is a salad, basically, everything has to be chopped really fine. So I'm going to go ahead and chop everything. At the same time, I'm going to give you the talk about the bad habits of Ramadan. And in the beginning, before I start everything, I'm going to go ahead and soak the burghul, which is actually, this is basically wheat. It's not a special ingredient that you have to go to a special location. It is fine at number 1 I bought. What I'm going to do, they usually what they do is they soak it in water for a few hours, maybe 1 hour or less. But what I will do, I will go ahead and soak it in lemon juice, and that way it will absorb that lemon taste. Okay, so if we ask any person on the street, what is Ramadan about? The usual answer that we get is Ramadan is about no eating from sun up to sundown. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, that's where it ends. So Ramadan to them became a month of not eating and not drinking. But I just want to mention one thing, that there's a hadith the Prophet ﷺ said that fasting is actually a shield from hellfire. And the other thing we know is that if an imam or if someone went inside of a buffet restaurant and he ate while fasting and he forgot, from a fiqhi point of view, his fasting is still valid when he goes out of the restaurant. Like, oh my God, I forgot that I am fasting. If he was sincere, then his fasting is still actually valid. This means that there is something else happens besides eating and drinking. Next step, we will go ahead and chop the tomatoes. So one of the bad habits that we evolved during this month is that we care so much about eating. The main concern becomes the meal of the day, the chef special, the most important issue. We start preparing Ramadan with exotic foods. We don't usually see any time in the year. And when it's time for Maghrib, we eat like we are starving. And when we wake up, when we are fasting, the first thing, we look at the clock and the countdown begins. Oh, there's 12 hours left. And all day we're thinking, what food should I have, and what will I include, what will be waiting on the table, and in the last seconds we do the contest of the fastest eater, unfortunately imitating the kuffar, the man versus food. So brothers and sisters, let's put the food and drink aside and free ourselves to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because unfortunately what happens that we fast and we spend our time and effort in preparing the meal. Okay? Many people at this time of in this age, they live to eat and they do not eat to live. What do I mean by that is some people dedicated their life just to try all different type of foods in the world. they go and they travel, and unfortunately this is for the majority of people. They live every day and they look forward to try a different type of food. They don't want to have the same type of food that they had yesterday, which is alright, but not to make it as something, as what this is your life and what is all your life about. You know what I mean? Those people who say, "Oh, I had I had Indian food. You had Mexican food? No, I had Pakistani food. Good, let's go ahead and celebrate and have some Yugoslavi food or something like that." You know, those people. This is the problem that we started to evolve. But let's go ahead and look how we should be eating. You know, we all know the hadith that talks about the Prophet ﷺ used to eat, the third of his stomach used to be water, and the third was food, and then air for third. We all know this hadith, but who knows the beginning of this hadith? You know, I'm gonna include myself. I was surprised when I read the beginning of the hadith. So let's go ahead and examine the beginning of the hadith. Let's put it here. As you can see, the beginning of the hadith, it talks about the ayat is actually the maximum and not the minimum. So what happened to our mentality that the minimum becomes the maximum, and the maximum is basically 1 inch from exploding. The other thing is that we have this habit that if we are not 100% full, we have this feeling that we should fill that area, especially when we eat in a buffet restaurant, which I don't recommend to go there, because you're gonna eat anyways too much. So when you are full and you notice that you still have a little bit a gap in your stomach, you get dissatisfied. So you walk around and you try to find something to eat and to fill that a small portion of your stomach that still have air in it. And this is another bad habit that we at this generation that we have evolved. Alright, so what other bad habits that happens in the time of Ramadan? One of them is the huge shopping list. More meats and more food and more money is spent during the month of Ramadan. And statistics shows that the average family spends 3 times more on shopping and groceries in the month of Ramadan, even though we do have the same exact stomach. So the problem is, especially when you go shopping and when you get paid in your job and you go and you have for example, $1,000, and you're walking in the aisles of the food and you are fasting, and it's about in the end of the day, so you'll be so hungry, and so you'll be grabbing everything in the shelf and putting it in the cart because you're so hungry. So I do advise everyone not to shop when you're very hungry, or when you shop at the beginning part of the day and not at the end part of the day, or shop at the night if you do have time after Taraweeh or something like that. I used to work at a grocery store, at a supermarket, and I remember people used to come and at 3 a.m. in the morning, and they will be on intoxicants. I'm not going to mention them, but that's type of intoxicant that they make them very, very hungry. So they walk around in the supermarket and they're smiling and they're happy and they're putting everything in the floor. That's because this type of intoxicant, they make them hungry and they're not thinking very straight. I'm not going to talk about when we throw food. This is totally haram. We should not do that, especially when people are starving in the world. Alright, so another bad habit in Ramadan that happened is how we spend our time during the time of fasting. Unfortunately, to a lot of people, when we are fasting, we make sure that we are we're at home, not going outside in the sun, in the mode of hibernation, making sure that we don't waste energy. And unfortunately, you see this a lot. And if you look at history, we see that for example, jihad was legislated in the time of fasting. The Battle of Badr was also in the time of fasting. The conquering in Spain, in France, the Battle of Ain Jalut, and a lot of expeditions were happening at the time of fasting. So we see that the month of Ramadan is a month of victory and a month of activity, and not a month of laziness. And at the same time, when we look at the month of Sha'ban, which is the month before Ramadan, we see that the Prophet ﷺ used to fast the most after the month of Ramadan is the month of Sha'ban. And scholars say the purpose of the hikmah behind that is to prepare himself for the month of Ramadan. For example, just like in a soccer match, you see the team is practicing months before the actual match. So when they are in the actual match, they give their best performance. So the same thing, we have to use the month of Sha'ban as not as a month of hibernation and fattening ourselves before the month of starvation, but we'll go ahead and follow the Sunnah. And inshallah, this is another thing that happens in the month of Sha'ban. So I'm chopping up the basils, and again, dry basils will also work, and everything should be finely chopped. So inshallah, we'll go ahead and take a small break, and we will be back with Chef Yusuf, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
And rewards for everlasting. Feed the world, feed the fasting.